So our first major assignment is the literacy narrative. And I want to point out that the literacy narrative is due by midnight on Wednesday of our first full week together. So that is the Wednesday of the first full week, Monday through Friday, that we meet as a class. It's due by midnight on that Wednesday. And again, you want to submit it right here for my feedback and right here for a peer's feedback. And then by midnight, the next night, that Thursday, you will want to use this link right here for your peer review guidelines to submit your response to a peer's draft. Okay? But let's start by going over the actual assignment itself. And remember, you always have an assignment sheet for every major writing assignment and a video just like this to go over the assignment sheet with you. In other words, if we were in a classroom together, I wouldn't just submit an assignment. I would go over it with you in class. So this video should serve as that introduction to the assignment. Okay, so the assignment requirements for the literacy narrative. You can see that we've got our learning objectives. This is what, in other words, this is what your goal is. This is what you're trying to do as you sit down to write. You want to write a narrative of 3.5 or more pages that narrates your development as a learner, thinker, and writer. You want to make sure that that includes an introductory paragraph or paragraphs that include that includes an opening that raises readers' interests and leads to a clear main thesis or claim about literacy. Sometimes we call that a narrative hook. Right? In writing, we think about ways to pique your reader's interest and get them invested in reading on. Okay? You want to make sure that you write body paragraphs that connect back to that thesis that tells an interesting, well-developed story using specific details, effective examples, and sensory language. So you want to, as you narrate your own literacy for us, what it is that brought you to being a literate person at this particular point in your life, you want to make sure that you're writing that in a well-developed, engaging way that keeps your writer interested and invested. Compose ending paragraphs that connect back to that thesis, bringing the discussion to an interesting close, and construct your narrative in a logically organized fashion. Use consistent and correct spelling, grammar, and mechanics according to MLA conventions. And of course, see our textbook or writer's reference, or the Purdue OWL for that. And you want to, of course, provide full and thoughtful supportive feedback to one or more of your peers' drafts. Okay? So, MLA, that's right out of the gate. Students always want to know, what are my formatting requirements for this assignment? So, MLA, 3.5 or more pages, and the goal then is to write this assignment. You want to compose a polished, coherent, and organized version of your critical literacy narrative, which is an essay highlighting the literacy stories that come to mind in chronological or thematic order and express a claim or a thesis you might make about literacy. For example, power, agency, identity, creativity, cultural awareness, access, etc. Whatever that thesis is, you want to make sure that you can relate to it personally. How becoming literate impacted your life through any of those claims, right? That becoming literate perhaps gave you more power or agency, or becoming literate shaped your identity, or becoming literate enabled certain types of creativity for you, or cultural awareness, access to certain things that you would not have had without that literacy. All of the readings that we'll be doing for this unit should help shape the way you think about that. You'll be introduced to examples of literacy narratives, but you'll also be introduced to what we call literacy sponsors, right? The kinds of people or events in your life that may have led to a more advanced literacy in your case. You'll write 2 drafts of this assignment this semester, one that is submitted on the As You Learn for peer review and my feedback, again due by midnight on Wednesday, and one that will be revised based on that feedback and submitted through your final portfolio. So draft 1, the literacy narrative, first draft, is a complete rough draft in that it's still under construction, but it is complete. So the entire draft must be composed, not just a few paragraphs. The goal is to think about your life and history as a learner and thinker, inside and outside the academic realm. The literacy narrative is your opportunity to tell the story, or in interconnected stories even, about the roles that reading and writing played in your life personally, academically, and professionally. You should discuss this you should discuss in this paper your literacy journey, how you became literate, why reading and writing are important to you, and the literacy sponsors in your life. How has literacy shaped the world available to you throughout your life? How has literacy been entangled with your specific lived experiences, perhaps your race and ethnicity, or even your religion? Consider discussing the types of literacy you've learned, developed, and hope to continue. For example, how did the way you learn to read and write transition into other literacies and discourses like music, medicine, science, or computer programming? How did you learn about a specific discipline or field? Maybe even your major. What discourse do you eventually hope to master in order to further your education and contribute to the world? Above all, the paper should be a coherent focus on your literacy throughout your personal, academic, and professional life so far, and your connecting theme or your thesis should be a claim that you make about literacy. So lastly, please remember, this is your writing. You own it. Don't forget that part of this process is your own response to at least one peer's draft, using full, thoughtful, and supportive feedback, guided by those peer review guidelines that I posted on As You Learn. So it's not just enough for you to become critically aware of your own literacy process, but I want you to provide meaningful feedback to a peer, not just about their literacy process, but the way that they've composed that narrative in terms of their writing. Draft 2, you will take that feedback and you will submit it through the final portfolio. It should utilize my feedback. It should utilize peer review in order to expand and improve the quality of Draft 1. You want to be sure to use the feedback to further develop areas within the narrative and strengthen the narrative structure of the previous draft. And you'll want to revise Draft 1, making sure to demonstrate a strong voice throughout the story and a clear sense of direction. Your revisions should effectively use correct and consistent grammar, spelling, and mechanics according to MLA conventions. And these are the grading criteria. In other words, when I set down to grade your final portfolio and look at that final draft, this is what I will be looking to assess. Okay, so that's it. That is our first major assignment in the class, the literacy narrative.